Here's a question I've asked hundreds of people over the years, from pastors to CEOs, from athletes to students, from parents to entrepreneurs. Where are you strong and where are you struggling? Almost everyone can answer the first part easily. I'm strong spiritually, I'm disciplined physically, I'm sharp mentally, I'm great at my career. They know where they excel. But when I press on that second question, where are you struggling? The answers get more interesting. Because what most people describe isn't just weakness in one area, it's systematic collapse in another. The pastor who's spiritually deep but physically wrecked, the CEO who's mentally brilliant but emotionally fragile, the athlete who is physically elite but has no spiritual grounding, the parent who's relationally committed but mentally exhausted. These people, they're not lazy, they're fractured. And fragmentation is the hidden pattern destroying effectiveness, marriages, careers. It's destroying your health across almost every domain in life. So modern culture seems to, and maybe modern culture is not the right way to say it, but like in present day, you will have a lot of people who will celebrate specialization, right? Think about it, right? Like in academia, you want to be the person who goes into a particular field and becomes the expert in that field. In the business world, we call that kind of like, hey, you're playing to your strengths or double down on your strengths, right? And then you have like other places and other areas where it's just like, there's a lot of them. I know you've heard them before, right? Where basically you want to, even in, and especially in the corporate world, where your whole career is lined up based on a particular path. And typically it's very hard to break out of that path, right? If you end up in insurance, it's hard to break from insurance. If you end up in finance, chances are you're not going to go into a completely different industry, right? You're not going to go into, you name it. You're not going to go into IT from finance. Typically, there's people that have done it, of course, and there's probably a lot of people that have done it, but that's not the typical thing. That's not the typical pathway. Usually, you play to your strengths. You double down on the experience that you have and build up your career from there, right? So we talk about and we celebrate specialization all over the place. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Actually, that's okay. We celebrate the people who spend the time and dedicate the time and the effort and the energy and went out and got those skills and built on the skills that they already had to specialize in a particular thing. But here's where we mess up. We mess up when we say, I'm not a religious person, right? Or I'm not a gym person. I'm not a physical person, right? I don't really, or you say, well, I'm a spiritual person, right? All of these are statements. They're all justifications, right? It was like, I'm more of a thinker. I'm more of an analytical person. Or look, I've said it for years. I'm a numbers guy, right? A lot of times when you say these things are said not only in efforts to say like, hey, I specialize in this one thing, but also it's it's almost like an excuse to say like, hey, I'm this and I'm not that, but I'm this and I'm really good at this. So this is what I am. So what I'm saying is a lot of times a specialization in a role, people will take that and apply that same ideology, that same methodology to the entirety of their being. So then all of a sudden their role becomes who they are. And you see that a lot in the corporate world where it's just like, hey, look, I'm a fill in the blank here. And they dedicate all of their lives to being whatever it is that you filled in that blank with, right? So for instance, I was in finance. When I was a regular financial analyst, right? That'd be like me taking my financial analysis career and saying that's who I am and that's what I am, right? Both of them combined. It's like, who are you? I'm a financial analyst. That's where we get into trouble, right? Because then we take this specialization of this particular path, this particular career path here in this instance, in this example, but we take the specialization of this particular role and we adopt it to our entire being. And that causes issues. And this same problem happens, or the same thing, this typically happens with Christians as well, right? Now, again, I'm not saying that specialization in a particular role is bad. It's not at all. But when you adopt that to mean the entirety of your entire being, there you go. That's a problem. The entirety of your entire being. The entirety of your being, I mean. When you take that to basically mean all of what you are, that's where you run into a problem. So like I said, for Christians, what happens is we are all supposed to have different gifts. We're all given different gifts and different jobs and different functions within the body of the church. That's good. That's what it's biblical, it's written. That's fine. But then the sneaky part is that people will typically use their role as a justification to neglect other arenas of their life. Case in point, you have somebody who's running a ministry and they're running themselves into the ground because they're serving, they're feeding others, whatever it may be, but they're also being fed spiritually. And they saying, hey, my spirit will carry me through. God will renew my spirit. That'll carry me through. And yes, God absolutely does renew your spirit. But a lot of times what happens is you're neglecting your body. If you're getting 3 hours of sleep because you're running a ministry, you're going to burn out. That's just a fact. That's what happens, right? But these ministry leaders would then drive their bodies into the ground for the sake of, right? So they're fragmented too. But here's the thing, the fragmentation in the Christian community is almost justified. Justified. I'm air quoting here, right? So that's a big problem, really is, maybe I'm overselling it, but it's an issue where you're conflating or confusing rather the specialization in a role with who you are as a person, as a being, with all of these different arenas working together. So a lot of times what people will do is they'll hide behind their role. They'll hide behind one arena that they're strong in. All right. So, I mean, clearly, like, just take a physical person. They're in the gym all the time. They love working out. They're getting everything, and their health is, in that sense, is good. But they're a jerk. So they don't have many friends. But hey, look, they're in good health, I guess, right? They're okay. But they don't really think too much. So they're open for manipulation. But I mean, still, they get their reps in and everything's good, right? But they don't really have much emotional intelligence, so they can't really tell when somebody is actually upset with them from something they did. So they really don't have that much awareness either. But still, I mean, they can run 5 miles easily without breaking a sweat. Right? You see my point? So the biblical framework here and everything that I'm building right now, everything that I'm telling you and all these observations and all these things that I'm realizing on this journey, a lot of it, most of it, next to all of it, 99.999% of it stems from something biblical, because that's just the way I see it. And in this case here, Mark 12:30 comes to mind, right? Mark 12:30 says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. What that doesn't say is, it doesn't say pick which arena that you're best at and work with that one and forget the others. It doesn't say, operate on heart only. It doesn't say operate on spirit alone. It doesn't say operate with your strength by your strength and continue on, right? That's calling for the entirety of your being. The entirety of your being. That's the basis. So a lot of times it trips me out sometimes where it's just like, especially when there are Christians who will read that and completely go over the fact that they're really only specializing in one arena. Maybe they really understand the heart arena and they neglect everything else. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that these people are lazy. I'm not saying they're lazy at all, because a lot of them are very, very hard workers. They work hard at whatever they're doing, whatever they specialize in terms of their role. They work very hard at that particular, staying strong in that particular arena. They're not lazy. And I wouldn't even say they're confused. They're just, that's what fragmentation or fragmented is. That's what I'm saying. They're fragmented.